Hello and welcome to what I'm going to call my grown-up book report for my Intro to Social Media Marketing class. The book that I chose to read was Gary Vaynerchuk's Jab, 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 Right Hook. First things first, why did I choose this book? Initially, I was sort of leaning towards doing a book on the history of Twitter, something more Twitter related. I'm a little biased, big Twitter fan, but I kind of decided that I wanted to be a little broader, maybe learn some things about some platforms I wasn't as familiar with, and also have get into some reading that would apply more directly to the social media as a whole, not just maybe one platform. So I chose this book because it just kind of seemed like fun. The title is great. The color of the book, it was glossy. It looked like a fun read, and it was a fun read. So the title of this book is obviously a reference to boxing. And the idea behind this book is that the author is comparing social media marketing to a boxing match, and the marketer should be approaching it that way. So I thought the first thing I would do is analyze whether or not this metaphor, boxing is sort of social media marketing, actually works. And I think it does. It works very well. I was a little concerned when I first picked it up that if it was going to go too in-depth into boxing, it was going to be way over my non-sports fan, literally have never seen a boxing match that wasn't on Rocky head. But it doesn't. It's very simple and it's to the point and it works brilliantly. So basically, the conceit of this book is that throughout history, marketers in traditional media have really been throwing what he likes to call right hooks, which is when you're trying to sell something directly to a customer. So whether it's you're trying to sell them a product or get them to show up somewhere or do something for you, donate money, whatever it is, that's a right hook. It's a direct ask to a customer. And in the past, traditionally, those were the only types of marketing campaigns that were out there. The ones that you would see on 30-second TV commercials, the ones that you would see in billboards, magazine ads, those types of things. But then along came social media, which was an entirely new way to reach customers, but they weren't responding to right hooks in the same way on these new platforms. People come to social media to engage, to be interactive, to have fun, to learn things, to talk to their friends. They don't come there to be marketed to, and they don't have to sit there and be marketed to the same way they did when they were sitting in front of the TV. So if brands come on there and they simply try to sell them things, people are likely to get offended, to get annoyed, to just ignore them. If brands want to interact with customers now, they have to use something that the author refers to as the jab. The jab is something that they do on a day-to-day basis to get people to identify with their brand and be interested in the things that the brand is putting out. So it's fun content, it's news stories, it's interesting links, it's humor, it's all kinds of things that brands put out on a daily basis that kind of jab their customers continuously and build up a rapport so that when they do say, hey, our product is on sale here, or hey, do you want to come see this concert, or would you like to watch this television show, people are a little more responsive to that because they feel like they've been warmed up. They feel like they have been interacted with and engaged with, and they're willing to pay attention to those right hooks just a little bit more, which usually involves clicking on something and buying something in social media land. And part of what the author is saying here is that companies are naturally only interested in the right hook because all they really care about when it comes down to it is selling products. So they ignore the jabs, they don't pay attention to them, and they don't put the same amount of creativity into them as they could be putting into it. And in a boxing match, you can't just go around throwing right hooks at your opponent and expect to knock him out. It's all the well-placed jabs ahead of time that allow you to throw that run right hook that knocks someone down to the mat. So the author is really trying to help marketers understand the jab better and try to help them understand how important it is, how they cannot neglect it, especially on these new platforms that marketers are very reluctant to experiment with. One of the great points that the author makes using the boxing metaphor, which I really responded to, was the idea that you have to analyze the game tape. That if you are a brand on social media, you should not only be analyzing your competitors' every move, which you obviously should be doing. You wouldn't show up to a boxing match if you didn't know your opponent's move inside and out. So if you are Kellogg's, you should know what General Mills is doing on every social media platform and be aware of that. But it's also about analyzing the platforms themselves. that's the most important game tape, because so many of these platforms come out and they're new and marketers aren't sure what to do with them, so they kind of ignore them. One of the great comments he makes is that, people show up to Snapchat and they go, oh, it's just bikini photos, so I'm going to ignore that. But the idea is you should show up to Snapchat, you should look at Snapchat and you should go, okay, how can this be better than bikini photos? How can I turn these bikini photos into something that benefits me? So as a social media marketer, you should be analyzing every single platform and really finding out what makes them tick so that you can use them properly. The same way that you would find out every single detail about the fight that you're going to fight before you show up to a boxing match. Another interesting point that the author makes is how social media has forced marketers to stay on their toes, be a little more light on their feet, if you will, to respond to everything that's happening in the marketplace. In the past, you'd have like a 6-month campaign, you'd plan that campaign, you'd execute it, you'd put it out there, and you kind of just stood back for those 6 months, whether it was successful or unsuccessful, until you scrapped it and started again. Now, it's 365 days a year, mostly 24 hours, you're constantly online and adjusting your fighting strategy to respond to current events, changes in the marketplace, all of this stuff. You really have to be nimble. That is super important. So overall, I thought it was a brilliant comparison that the author is making. He used it to great effect, and his overall points I really agreed with. I thought were really important. This idea of marketers needing to learn how to use the jab better, I think, is very, very true. So many people don't use it properly, and that's why they're unsuccessful on these new media platforms, because they just don't understand how to interact with customers. They expect to be able to do it the same way they did in the past, and they obviously can't. And we've talked about that a lot in class as well. So this book covered some of that same ground, but just approached it with an interesting metaphor that I thought really worked. The only criticism I would really have for this book overall is that it's a little outdated as it came out in 2013. That's really no one's fault. It's interesting to point out because it must be really hard to write books on social media and how to utilize it properly when a lot of the stuff that you say is already a little bit irrelevant 2 years down the road. He talked about Tumblr being this place of animated GIFs, which it is, but other platforms have already incorporated those things. You see them all the time on Twitter now, so those things have changed. Vine was just coming out when he wrote this book. LinkedIn was just starting to offer some of the stuff that we discussed. So you really have to take some of the analysis that he does, the deep analysis of the platforms, with a little bit of a grain of salt, because he's 2 years behind whatever you're currently experiencing, and in another year he's going to be 3 years behind. So these books, I assume, are going to have a much shorter shelf life than books on media in the past, for sure, except for historical context. But again, not really the author's fault. It's just when you read these things, you really have to be aware that some of the content is already obsolete, probably a couple of months after it comes out.